Can you imagine what it was like to be in a boat with Jesus there and you suddenly get into a furious storm? You know, you can spiritualize that. What's it like for you when you get into the storms of life, but you have Jesus on board? Now, at the moment, we're studying Matthew's Gospel, and we're in chapter 8 and verse 18. And this is what it says. When Jesus saw the crowds around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. Then a scribe came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Isn't that fascinating? When we see how some preachers live, and the Lord has blessed me, he really has, I think about Jesus. There was absolutely nowhere for Jesus to sleep. Unless the Holy Spirit showed him, he didn't know where he would sleep that night. And as this scribe comes to him, and he's so ready to go, "I'll go anywhere with you," Jesus challenges him. "Do you realize that if you come with me, I don't even have anywhere to sleep?" And the indication is the man didn't follow. What about you? You see, American Christians love their creature comforts. We really do. At least I do. And I guess you do too. And we just thoroughly enjoy being comfortable. What would happen if Jesus said to us, "Follow me, but you don't know where you're going to sleep for the next 3 years"? Would you follow? Well, you say, yes, of course. Would you really? Are we really ready to give up the material blessings that the Lord has given us just to go with Jesus anywhere? We have a friend who has been a retreat speaker with us, and now he's working in Haiti. And he's got the most incredible conditions. And what a challenge. And he just knew that the Lord was laying it on him to go there. And they've sent some letters back to tell us the difference of the culture. And so often we get so comfortable and we don't even remember to pray for missionaries who are working in these other places. Another man, verse 21, one of his disciples, one of his followers said to Jesus, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." Jesus told him, "Follow me and let the dead bury their dead." Now, I'm sure you understand this. It didn't mean his father had just died and Jesus was being callous and saying, "Well, you can't even go and bury him." The son was saying, "Let me go home, and when Dad dies, I'll come with you." Jesus says, that's not the way it is. When I call you to come, follow me, you come. And leave those who are alive to be looked after. It's not always your responsibility. When Jesus lays his call on you, the responsibility is to follow him. And it's very clear here, wasn't it? Follow me. And let the dead bury the dead. And sometimes we get the wrong priorities. You say, "But Richard, it tells you to honor your father and mother." Yes, it does. But what is the interpretation of that when Jesus says, "Follow me"? And sometimes we get so literal that we're not really hearing what God is saying. So here again, there's that sensitivity to the scripture. Lord, what are you telling me to do? And we have to find his will for our lives. Then we get into that storm that I mentioned. Verse 23. Then Jesus got into a boat and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat, but Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and waves, and it was a complete calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and waves obey him." Now, first of all, let's look at this in the natural. If you go to the Sea of Galilee, as you look toward the east, there are the Golan Heights, which used to be Jordan. And sometimes a wind comes up there and it just absolutely sweeps down on that little piece of water. It's only about 7 miles by 3, and there's an incredible, furious storm. I mean, the thing is absolutely churned up in a flash. It's as though the wind comes down the ravines and through the valleys and just absolutely churns it up. I talked to our guide about this. He said, yes, it can happen within minutes without warning. And this is obviously what happened here. That was in the natural. But then there's something else. What about in the spiritual? As I said to you, each one of us gets into the storms of life. And some of you right now, the storm is furious. But if you have Jesus on board, notice what he says, because I think it applies to you in the spiritual as it applied to these men in the natural. You of little faith, why are you so afraid? When you think of who Jesus is, and you've got Jesus in your life, why are you afraid? You know in your heart he can handle absolutely anything. You know in your heart that nothing can happen to you that Jesus does not allow. Why are you afraid? If you have Jesus on board, you never need be afraid. You can rest in him, and you can have assurance in him. All things are in his hands. There's still another thing in this story. Jesus gets up, he rebukes the winds and the waves, they obey him. Well, you say, Richard, that was Jesus. Hold it. I don't think that's the point. I believe here you can go back to Genesis, and you can look at Adam, and there you see the first man. And God created man and gave him complete control over the whole of this earth. Man was the climax of God's creation. He was the one made in the image of God. It never says that about the animals. It doesn't say this animal and that animal were made in the image of God. Only man was. And because of this, God, loving man, gave him authority over this earth. I believe in the second Adam, Jesus Christ, you see that authority that was originally given to man being exercised. So Jesus did take the authority, and Jesus did calm the storm. The second thing is this. I believe there are situations in the natural when if you have that sort of faith in Jesus Christ, you too can take authority against the storm. Now, of all the television preachers I watch, there are only two that I listen to. I like to listen to Charles Stanley from time to time when I have the opportunity. But I also listen whenever I get the opportunity to Pat Robertson of CBN. I believe the man is outstanding, and you probably know this. 2 hurricanes have been coming right for Virginia Beach, where they have their television studios, would have absolutely destroyed the masts and put them off the air. And both times, Pat and the others have prayed, and those who follow hurricanes have watched them change direction. And that was true of this most recent hurricane, 300 miles across. And if you remember, the captain of the team who look at those hurricanes told Pat Robertson, this cannot miss you. And it did. Why? Because they took the authority that we see here and it was diverted. Now, I don't think that always happens, but I think it can always happen. And I think in Jesus Christ, that's the sort of authority we're given, and most of us never know it because most of us never exercise it. We don't really see who we are. We don't really believe what we can handle, what God has given us in Jesus Christ. You are powerful. I am powerful, not because of us, but because of him. Fantastic. Use what you have. Now, I'm not suggesting you start off with a hurricane, but use the authority Jesus has given you in situations of life, and when you get the big crisis, you'll know the one in whom you have faith. And because we live in the second Adam, then we can exercise that authority. You see, in that situation, you're becoming what God always meant man to be. To have that authority, and it was through sin that we lost the authority. Therefore, if I'm saved, if my sins are washed away, the authority is back. Not because of me, but because of Jesus. And I can stand up and take authority, even against the natural elements. Could you stop a volcano? I don't see why not. There is nothing our God cannot do, and he dwells within us. Which takes us to verse 28. When Jesus arrived at the other side in the region of the Gadarenes, which is on the eastern shore, by the way, across where the Golan Heights are, 2 demonic-possessed men came from the tombs and met him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Now let's look at some of this. It amazes me in teaching you and teaching our Bible studies through the gospel stories how many times the demonic comes up. And it amazes me still more that, having said that, how little we talk about the demonic within our churches and how little is known about the demonic. And I don't want to stress this, but I think we've got to understand. I believe Christians should be informed. Now notice, and I've said this to you before, these two men were possessed. Not often do we see that in this land. We're beginning to, but it's somewhat unusual. Satan had such a power over them, they could not exercise any other power. They were absolutely under the power of Satan. But there's a second thing. Notice what they said. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" They knew who Jesus was. Do you? They knew who Jesus was when the religious leaders of the day did not know who Jesus was. They didn't recognize him. Or if they did recognize him, they never declared it. Here was the Son of God in their midst, and they would not say he was the Son of God. In fact, they said he was son of Beelzebub, the son of the prince of demons. These men didn't. These men who had the demons knew he was the Son of God. They also said, "Have you come to torture us before the appointed time?" What does that mean? Demons know that their time is limited. Demons know that one day they're going to the pit, and then they will be tortured forever. Do you see why they torture us? They are getting their torture in on us before God leaves them to be tortured forever and ever and ever. And they know that. Have you come to torture us before the appointed time? And these demonic forces are very real today, and they'll do anything they can to destroy you and to destroy your walk in Jesus Christ, and you must resist them.